Hi, I'm Kaname. In this video, I'm going to teach you the basics of Japanese pitch accent. Just like English has the stress accent, Japanese also has something like stress. We call it accent. When the mora has an accent, we pronounce the mora at a higher pitch. For example, ongaku means music, and this word ongaku has the accent on the first mora o. So we pronounce O at a higher pitch. Ongaku, ongaku. Kudamono has the accent on the second mora, da. So we pronounce the second mora at a higher pitch. Kudamono, kudamono. So how should you pronounce a word? It depends on the location of the accent. And some words don't have the accent at all. We call this kind of word flat word. So here's one basic rule about Japanese pitch accent. You pronounce the first mora of a word at a lower pitch unless the word has the accent on the first mora. So for example, 動物 means animal. It is a flat word. So you pronounce the first mora lower and the rest in flat middle pitch like this. 動物, 動物. So when you pronounce a flat word, any flat word, it's all the same. You pronounce the first mora lower and the rest of the mora in flat pitch. 私 私、日本語、日本語、東京、東京。It is the same when you attach a particle like は or の or お。私は、私の、私を。There's so many flat words in Japanese, so if you know how to pronounce a flat word, you already know how to pronounce so many words in Japanese. And there's also very useful rules like when you attach go to a word, usually the word becomes flat. For example, 中国 has the accent on the first mora 中. But if you attach go to say Chinese language, then the word becomes flat. 中国語、中国語. You can apply this rule to almost any word. 韓国 becomes 韓国語. Thai becomes タイ語. 英語、ベトナム語、スペイン語、フランス語、ロシア語, all the same. When you say 何々語, they're basically all flat. The same thing can be said when you attach, for example, 的、個人的、心理的、精神的、文化的、論理的, etc. There might be some exceptions, but basically when you attach 的 on anything, the word becomes flat. It is the same when you attach 系、体育会系、ビジュアル系、オラオラ系, they are all flat. Then how to pronounce a word that have the accent? Let's call a word that has the accent accented word. So how to pronounce an accented word? So here is the rule. As I said, the first mora of a word is usually pronounced at a lower pitch unless the accent is placed on the first mora. So the first mora is pronounced at a lower pitch, and from the first mora to the accented mora, you pronounce it in rising pitch. So for example, when I say ディズニーランド, the accent is on la. So from the first mora D to the accented mora la, I pronounce them in rising tone like this. ディズニーラ。ディズニーラ and reaching its peak high at the accented mora la. ディズニーラ、ディズニーラ and from there on, after the accented mora, the pitch falls. ランド、ランド。ディズニーランド、 ディズニーランド. So here's the rule. When you pronounce an accented word, from the first mora to the accented mora, you read it in rising pitch. From the accented mora, the pitch falls. ディズニーランド、会社員、会社員、高等学校、高等学校. And if the accent is placed on the first mora, then you read the first mora high and the rest in falling pitch. 箸、箸、あんた、あんた、音楽、音楽. And if the accent is placed on the last mora of a word, then theoretically you pronounce it in rising pitch. For example, 妹 has the accent on to, so you pronounce it in rising pitch like this. 妹, 妹, theoretically. The reason why I said theoretically is because in many situations, Japanese people pronounce this tail high words. People call this type of word that has the accent on the last mora tail high word. When Japanese people pronounce a tail high word by itself, they pronounce it just like a flat word. So theoretically, it should be 妹, 妹, but when nothing is attached on it, people usually pronounce it just like a flat word. 妹, 妹, 弟, 弟, 男, 女. But if something is attached to it, then people still pronounce the accent. For example, if you attach a particle to 妹, 妹は, 妹は. Or if you attach です to 妹, 妹です, 妹です. The accent is emphasized. But when nothing is attached to it, people often, I'm not saying all the time, people often pronounce it just like a flat word. There are many useful rules that I can teach you. For example, when you attach jin, like people, to a word, the accent usually comes to the mora right before jin. For example, Russia has the accent on ro, but if you attach jin to say ロシア人, Russian people, then the accent comes to the mora right before jin. In this case, あ、ロシア人, ロシア人. France is a flat word, but if you attach jin to it, then the accent comes to the mora before jin. In this case, す, フランス人, フランス人. It's all the same. アメリカ人, モンゴル人, ブラジル人. But if the mora before jin is long vowel or double consonant tsu or nasal sound n, then since you cannot place the accent on double consonant or long vowel or nasal sound n, so the accent shift to the previous sound. So for example, when you want to say スウェーデン人, since スウェーデン, it ends with the nasal sound n. So you cannot place the accent on n, so the accent shift to the previous sound で. So it becomes スウェーデン人, スウェーデン人. Likewise, イラン ends with the nasal sound n. So when you want to say Iranian people, イラン人, the accent comes to the previous sound of n, ラ. イラン人, イラン人. And there's one other exception, which is Japanese people. When you say 日本人, for some reason, the accent is placed on じ. This is one exception. Please just remember it. 日本人, 日本人. There are many rules like that. For example, if you attach city, 市 onto the name of a region, for example, the same thing happened. 札 Sapporoshi. So the mora before shi has the accent. Sapporoshi, Fukuokashi, Kobeshi, Nagoyashi. Even though there might be some exceptions, but basically you can apply this rule to almost all words. Then what if you attach desu onto a word? If you attach desu to a flat word, the accent comes on de. Watashi desu, gakusei desu, saikou desu. But if you attach this to an accented word, you treat this as a flat word. So for example, when you say anata desu, anata originally has the accent on na, and when you attach this to it, then you just attach desu as a flat word. So you say anata desu, anata desu, saru desu, saru desu, itai desu, itai desu, all the same. So when you attach this to an accented word, you treat this as a flat word. You just attach to the word without changing the location of the accent. But here's one exception about desu. I said when you attach this to a flat word, the accent comes on de. But when nothing is attached to des, people generally pronounce it just like a flat word. What does it mean? For example, I told you when you attach this to a flat word like watashi, then the accent is supposed to come to de. Watashi desu, watashi desu. But when nothing is attached to desu like a particle, then people generally omit the accent on this and read it like a flat word. Watashi desu, watashi desu. But if you attach anything to it, like a particle, then you cannot omit the accent on de. Like, watashi desu yo, watashi desu ne, watashi desu yo ne, watashi desu ka? The accent on de is put emphasized. Konnichiwa, watashi wa kaname desu. I could say, konnichiwa, watashi wa kaname desu. But usually, especially grown-ups, they generally omit the accent on de. Some small kids might say, これは私の帽子です. But it sounds a little bit childish. So generally people omit the accent on de when nothing is attached to it. And actually, masu is also like that. When you attach mas to any verb, no matter if the verb attached has the accent or not, the accent comes to ma all the time. So for example, yomu has the accent on yo, yomu. But when you change it into masu form, yomimasu, then the accent on yo disappears. Instead, accent comes to ma, yomimasu. It is the same. You can apply this rule to all verbs. 食べます, 飲みます, 買います, 行きます. But same as this. When nothing is attached to it, people generally omit the accent on ma. 食べます, 行きます, 読みます, 買います, 話します. People pronounce it just like a flat word, but when something is attached to it, then you cannot omit the accent on ma. For example, 食べますよ, 食べますね, 食べますよね, 食べますか? You have to pronounce the accent on ma. So just like this, when nothing is attached to it, people generally omit the accent. People say, おはようございます. Even though you can say, おはようございます, but it sounds like something a child would say. Some cheerful small kids might say, おはようございます. But usually grown-ups would omit the accent on mas. Just say, おはようございます. よろしくお願いします. Kids might say, よろしくお願いします。ありがとうございます。ありがとうございます。Maybe here you might wonder when I say, おはようございます。よろしくお願いします。I haven't divided the accent into two units. But when I say, ありがとうございます、I divided this phrase into two accent units. That is because when flat words come next to each other, you combine them into one accent unit. So, よろしく is a flat word. お願いします as I told you, people read it just like a flat word. So when those flat words comes together, people generally combine them into one accent unit. Say, よろしくお願いします。よろしくお願いします。Same when you say, おはようございます。おはようございます。But when you say, ありがとうございます、since ありがとう has the accent, it has the accent only, so this unification doesn't occur. So that's why when I say ありがとうございます、I have divided the phrase into two accents, but よろしくお願いします、I treat it as one accent phrase. So when people say 私は学生です、unless you put emphasis on 学生、私は学生です。You don't divide 私は and 学生です into two accent units. But when you want to say 私は留学生です。Since 留学生 has the accent, so this phrase is divided into two accent units. 私は and 留学生です。私は留学生です。There are many other useful rules about the accent, but I cannot cover everything in one video, so that's it for today. 皆さん、ありがとうございました。You might wonder, wait a second, when I said ありがとうございました, there's accent on ま. Well, that is because when you conjugate them, for example, ます becomes ました, then you cannot omit the accent on ま. You can omit the accent on ま only when nothing is attached to it or when you're not conjugate them into other form. ありがとうございます is fine, but when you say ございました then you have to pronounce the accent on ま。ありがとうございました。それでは皆さん、ありがとうございました。